All right, guys, today we're in Sharon, Tennessee. That's a small town in West Tennessee, in Weakley County, Tennessee. We're at the Woodlawn Cemetery here in Sharon, and we're going to take a look at the grave of my dad's cousin, Robert G. Bolton. He passed away in 2009 at the age of 77 years old, I believe. Kind of a sad situation in my mind because he and my dad, again, they were first cousins, and they were really good, really close friends, more than cousins growing up. Throughout my dad's life, they hung out a lot, did a lot together over the years, and a few years before he passed in 2009, they had some type of little falling out, I guess. They quit communicating and quit speaking to one another, and I guess it was probably a couple of years after that. I was down in Jackson, Tennessee, where he had lived, and I drove by his house and noticed that it had burned. It was still standing, but it had been gutted by fire. So I told my dad next time I saw him, what I saw, and he's like, "Wow, I didn't know." Of course, now to back up, my parents are not on the internet in any way. They don't know how to access the internet or nothing about it, so they don't know how to do any research on anything like this. But I did a little research and basically found out that he had passed away again in 2009 at his home. Apparently it was natural causes. Now, Bob, or Bobby as we called him, he never married, never had any kids, so basically he had no family to speak of other than my dad. And of course, like I said, at the time of his death, they were not on speaking terms. So therefore, it was probably 3 or 4 years or so before my dad was ever even aware that he had passed away. And I let Dad know the funeral home that took care of his funeral and burial, what have it. And he contacted that funeral home, which was in Jackson, Tennessee, and he found out, tried to find out some information. Of course, they didn't have a lot to give him, really, other than what I'd already found out online. But now, Dad did mention that he had already had his final wishes and plans prepaid for, and had supposedly had a gravesite already prepaid and ready to go. And this gravesite that he had, according to my dad now, and I feel like he would know, they were such good friends throughout many years. Even back in the 90s, I'll say this, they put the casinos in Tunica, Mississippi, and they would go all the time to the casinos together. That's how, they were just really close. But Dad had mentioned that he had his funeral prepaid and prearranged at a different funeral home, not the one that actually, not the funeral home that actually did his funeral, final burial. Now, he had an attorney that he used. He was a retired school teacher. He taught high school back in probably the 60s, I guess, maybe 70s, and he taught college. I think he taught at Jackson State Community College in Jackson, Tennessee for a while. So he was a retired school teacher, but he also was a businessman. He owned some businesses over the years. He actually owned Travelers Motel in Jackson, Tennessee, and that's still there today. And I'm told that back when he owned that, the only other option for a place to stay in Jackson was like the Holiday Inn. So that was just Travelers Motel, small motel. And like I said, guys, it's still there. Probably owned by Indians or something now, I'm not sure. But it is still there. He did own it probably in the 70s. But they get a little sprinkle here, so I'm going to ease on back toward the grave. It took me a while to find this after driving through here, but I did find it. It's right down close to where my car is at. But it's just a sad situation, guys. He passed away alone. He was never married, like I said, never had any kids or anything like that. So my dad was probably the only family he had. And he had it was a really short obituary. And at the end of the obituary, it said, he leaves no immediate family. And that's just sad to me, because really, not really true. But at the time of his death, I'm sure, they didn't know how to contact my dad or whatever. And as far as I was speaking of, he had his funeral and his final wishes prepaid and prearranged at a different cemetery, which is in Martin, Tennessee, East Side Cemetery. And if I can, I'm going to swing over there. His parents are buried there. And so it was our understanding, or Dad's understanding, that he was supposed to be buried there, and already had a headstone there, had his funeral and arrangements prepaid at a different funeral home, not the one that handled at the time of his actual death. So I just wonder sometimes, is this really where he wanted to be buried? Now, he does have some other family members here beside him. So, I'll look and see. I brought some flowers I was going to put on his grave, but I read the sign up there, and it talks about placing flower arrangements, and you can't have anything placed directly on the grass. It has to be one of these little holders here, and you see his stone doesn't have that. So I'm going to follow their rules and regulations. I hope he's resting peacefully. I don't know that this is where he wanted to be buried. Here you have A. Elizabeth Bolton, passed in 1942. And then this here, I think, was his brother. It's hard to read, but I can't really make it out, guys. But they passed in December 14th of 1931. Looks like they were born November of 21, so about 10 years old, very young. I think that might have been his brother. But so he is buried by some family here. I'm gonna try to run over to Martin, Tennessee. It's not far from here. And like I said, it's supposed to rain all week long, and it's just now starting to sprinkle and everything. So I've been out here about an hour looking for this stone, and of course it's right here off one of the drives. So maybe I need to get better glasses or whatever. But I wanted to come and pay my respects. My dad, like I said, they had some type of falling out. I don't know what it was about. I don't think it was anything serious. It's sad, that he passed, and Dad didn't know about it. He wasn't around, really his only family. Sometimes things happen like that. I'm sure it happens all the time in families. But I know if Dad could come down here and see the grave, he would probably, and since it's right here at this drive, my dad's confined to a wheelchair basically, but I can probably get him down here and drive him up right next to this here where he could see the grave, and I'm sure he would want to come visit. But anyway, guys, that's just a sad story. My dad's first cousin, Robert Gene Bolton, born January 30th, 1932, and passed on November 16th, 2009.